Hello and welcome to Dishing on Divorce. My name is Mandy Barr, and I am super excited to have our guest today, Richard Heller. Richard is a parent coordinator and has been with Vesta now for how long have you been with us?
Like 8 months, 9 months.
Oh my God, I don't know if it's a sign of me getting older or time is just going by so fast.
It's post-pandemic time. The pandemic time was like molasses. Post-pandemic is like race cars.
I actually like that. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think there's truth to it.
Yeah, no, it definitely it makes more sense. I feel like during the pandemic, I was able to get a lot more accomplished than post because I didn't have to leave my house, right?
Yeah,
Wonderful. So 8 months, and you are a parent coordinator, and you're based out of New York.
correct.
But you're in Florida right now. But however,
Yes. Don't tell anyone. I've been in Florida all winter.
Jealous, very
It's
jealous.
been awesome. It's the first time I've ever done it, actually. And I found out that that seasonal affect disorder is real.
Yeah.
I thought that, I was just very quiet in the winter, but actually I think I might have been clinically depressed. It wasn't quite that bad, but the lower sunlight definitely is impactful.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that you can, like in Florida, you can go outside and you can go to restaurants, you can go to walks, you can still go to the beach. There's just so many.
Well, you could do that during the pandemic too. There was no pandemic here, I heard.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll keep politics out of it. Divorce is a hard enough topic, right?
That's right.
So how did you get into parent coordinating? And what is it?
Parent coordination is where preferably trained individual helps two either divorced or divorcing parents to figure out how they're going to parent from separate domiciles and whether they're really going to parent how in sync they're going to parent. And I got into it sort of through a side door. I started out as a divorce coach, and my first aha moment as a divorce coach was, wow, this is a really small planet I'm on. And I started to notice that the things that people individually needed to get along with the parent on the other side, even if they were really toxic, were the same tools that couples needed. And so I got trained as a mediator and started doing couples work. And then an attorney said, oh, you're trained as a mediator and you work with couples? Wow, you should get into parent coordination. There's not enough parent coordinators and you'd be really good at it. So I went to Chicago, actually, like the month that the pandemic broke, like that March. I went to Chicago and got trained as a PC, and it was really weird because there we are all in this classroom and we're like, should we be breathing? Like that nobody really knew that we were going into a pandemic, that it was just kind of starting. I had just gone to a dinner with my wife, and everyone in the dinner was like rubbing elbows, but nobody knew what to do. It's just kind of like it was a mystery. We all kind of knew something big was coming, but so anyway, I finished the PC class. None of us got sick as far as I know, and then got into PC work really in the pandemic. Working with an organization called Family Kind. Family Kind is a not-for-profit in New York that helps families that have lower incomes to work through the divorce process. And so I cut my teeth working with high conflict couples in lower income situations with Family Kind. And I still give my time to that organization. They're a fantastic organization. If you're in New York, they have great resources. Check them out. Sorry, that's my plug for Family Kind. They're not for profit.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the notes if anyone wants to check it out further.
Yeah, they've got online anger management classes, online parent education classes, all kinds of good stuff, great resources for people in all different kinds of relationship situations, but mostly around divorce.
Yeah, interesting. And I didn't realize that you were also a divorce coach beforehand. So you have a lot of tools in your tool bag.
It's a secret. People still call me for that sometimes, but I don't really talk about it in the Vesta environment because I work with a lot of divorce coaches in Vesta, and I respect their space. And I actually refer to them. Like, when people come to me for divorce coaching, I'll actually refer to Vesta divorce coaches because they are the best.
Oh, yeah, we are very fortunate, as well as we are very fortunate to have you as our parent coordinator. So tell me a little bit of the difference between a parent coordinator and a parent coach, because we have both in our network.
There's a lot of drift about that. And I've done both, and the truth is, if you've been trained as a parent coordinator, you can't really be a parent coach without putting on your parent coordinator hat. But the real distinction is that a parent coordinator, a good parent coordinator, will be trained. Number one, they'll be trained as a mediator. And what that means when they're trained as a mediator, it means they're specifically trained to help couples diffuse their own conflict, which coaches often are not. I'm a trained and certified coach with over 500 hours of coaching experience, and no one ever trained me in coaching how to diffuse conflict between a couple. But in mediation, they did. And the other thing is that as a trained parent coordinator, I was given all kinds of background about how different stages of child development are going to impact the needs of the children and how the parents are going to show up. And coaches often don't have that. I mean, I'm going to also have a master's in social work, so that wasn't alien to me, but it was great to get the refresher. And coaches aren't going to have that background a lot of time. Now, coaches may be super experienced and they may have learned those skills, so I'm not knocking them. But, usually a parent coach is going to, similar to a parent coordinator, they're going to be forward thinking and goal oriented, but they're not going to be trained in dealing with conflict, and they probably won't have as strong a background in child development and parenting, what kind of parenting styles need to meet different stages of child development.
So do you ever work directly with the kids, or is it always with the two parents?
I have not yet worked directly with the kids. I do offer to do that, but my stand on this is the child has to want it. And if a child is pre-adolescent, they probably should be working with a child psychologist or a child therapist. They're too young to be involved in the process. If they're adolescent, they're moving into adulthood, they're starting to believe that they're independent, and it might be helpful to have them in the room. But very often the adolescents, as we know, may have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they're just like, no, not coming. You guys figure it out, you jerks. And they're usually using stronger language than you jerks. But it's almost Easter, so I got to show up clean here.
Yeah, fair enough. So one of the other things that I hear so often when I'm speaking to people when we're talking about co-parenting is, oh, I can't co-parent. So how do you help couples get to that place? And I know that there's a, I think it's parallel parenting. Is that like the first step to be able to get people to co-parent well? Or
I think that co-parenting is kind of a mythical place, if I'm honest.
It's like a unicorn.
It's kind of like Shangri-La or heaven, or where do you go if you're a really enlightened Buddha?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I guess I got to learn more about Buddhism, but it's an ideal. Like co-parenting is an ideal. Like in the ideal of co-parenting, both parents, whether they're married or divorced, are in 100% complete lockstep and agreement about how to parent, right? And let's get real. Many parents are male and female on one side and the other. Some of them are male and male, and some of them are female and female. And they're the brains of a man's brain, a brain that's, let's actually, because of the multiple genders now, let's talk about bodies. A brain that evolves in a male body with, that's evolving with testosterone is physically wired differently than a brain that evolves in a female body that has more estrogen and less testosterone. And so right away, what that means is they think differently, and so are you ever going to find two parents who are in perfect unison, lockstep? Probably not. And that's why I say it's this ideal. But and then on the other end, there's this horrible place oh my God, parallel parenting, it's so awful, where you don't share any values. One's a Satan worshiper and the other one is a born again Christian. And it's just so bad. That's kind of how people think about it. But the reality is that whether you're divorced or married, parents fall somewhere in a scale, let's call 0 parallel parenting and 10 co-parenting. Parents fall on a scale in there, and I've been married twice. Right. This is my second marriage and we have a blended family. And like that just messes things up even more. We were talking about this earlier, audience, you missed it. But when you're in a blended family, you're the bonus parent, which means you're not, there are kids that you don't actually have authority over. And if you exercise authority over them, they basically say, WTF, you're not my mom, you're not my dad. And then they call up their real mom and their real dad, say, you know what he tried to do? And then their real dad or real mom calls you up and says, were you trying to parent Mike? And like, it's complicated. Right. So like,
stay in your lane, damn it.
Yeah. So in real life, you fall somewhere between 0 and 10, whether you're married or not. And the goal is to be as close to 10 as possible, not because it's good for you as parents, but because it's good for the kids. Right? Kids need at any age. They want consistency. They want consistent boundaries. They want to see consistent behavior. They want to know that the line is here and that everyone agrees that the line is there. And so when we in parent coordination, what we're trying to do is help people get from wherever they are on that scale to someplace higher.
Yeah. We talk about it in our mindset classes, right? Like we're never going to necessarily have the, anxiety and fear at a 0, right? That's a bottle of Chardonnay and a Xanax, right? We're trying to get people
oblivion.
to like
You're unconscious at that point.
Two or three, right? Where it's manageable and you're able to make rational decisions and not from a place of fear.
I don't know if I've ever experienced that. You say a bottle of Chardonnay and a Xanax? So I may try that.
No, we're not selling that here. We're not selling that. Yeah. So, but it takes practice. I mean, I've been divorced. My son's 18, so 15 years. So we've had 15 years of practicing being a co-parent. And I think that we do a really good job. But it's taken a lot of effort on both of our parts and a lot of conversation, a lot of, a commitment to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if people maybe when they're still like in that heated emotion based place that they're able to see past that. But I would imagine that that's your role, is to help the parents see past their anger towards the other one and see the benefit for the child on the other side.
And just, reflecting back on your original question about parent coordinating and coaching, a parent coach will tend to work with parents in all kinds of relationships and with all kinds of parenting issues. They might even be working with them. They might be working with them on work-life balance as a couple. A parent coach has got a much bigger playground that they're playing in. The role of the parent coordinator is very specifically, where are we on the scale between parallel parenting and co-parenting, and how can we come to an understanding that's in the best interest of the children? The PC role is super limited, and it's a lot more short term. A parent coach could work with parents forever if they wanted to. A PC, it's going to be a limited time engagement.
And how often do you get pulled into the equation with, when a couple is working with, whether it be a mediator or collaborative attorney, or like how often do they pull you in to help, clear up the waters? Or
I'd love to do a study on that, because I don't know. I like studies. By the way, I like science, right? I mean, I'm like this weird guy. I have like this whole spiritual faith thing going on one side, but I really like science on the other, right? Because I like to know what's true for people. And no one's really done a study on this. Like, when do you need a PC? But the way that it works is I typically get called in by attorneys.
Okay.
It's very unusual for the parents to say, oh, Mandy, you know what? This isn't working. We need a parent coordinator, right? Because first of all, most parents don't know what a parent coordinator is. And second of all, usually the couple's so busy disagreeing that they're getting divorced. Like, what? that the lawyers and the legal system will figure it out. No, they
Yeah.
sort of surrendered themselves to the process. So parent coordinators are called in by attorneys, sometimes mandated by judges. I've had people come to me who were mandated by judges, but in a mandated situation, it depends on whether they're taking this judge serious or not. I've had people come in for one session. They say to me, we're mandated, and they go through the motions. And about halfway through, I get it like, oh, they've agreed to go through the motions because they really don't want to do this. And at the end, it's like, okay, we fulfilled our mandate. Thank you. But probably about 60 or 70% of the time, people who are mandated will go, oh, there's something happening here that's different.
Yeah.
And the style of parent coordination I'm trained in is all about building small agreements.
Okay.
And so after an hour together or an hour and a half together, they'll notice, oh my God, we actually had some agreements. They may have been small, but and it's like, and for a lot of couples in the divorce process, this is the first time that they've been in the same room, whether it's virtual or real, and come to an agreement without being bullied into it, without having their attorney say it's in your best financial interest, or something like that. They actually have come to agreement. They've agreed between the two of them with some encouragement, with some structure, but they come to agreement. And when they have that experience, the sort of a light bulb goes off. Oh, something might happen here that's different. And the reason for that is that the court system is sort of set up as warfare, not really on purpose, but it's just kind of the environment. It's an aggressive negotiation. And attorneys, even though they say, oh, 97% of all my cases are settled out of court, unconsciously, they've been hired to represent the person that they've been hired to represent, and the attorney on the side is the enemy. It might be a friendly enemy. They might know that attorney for years. They might be able to go out and have drinks together, and all that. But when they're negotiating for their client, unconsciously they're positioned, and that doesn't happen in the PC room. In the PC room, we're all about getting under the positions, and that. So in the parent coordination with a well-trained parent coordinator, parents are going to experience something they haven't experienced maybe since, before they started having problems in their marriage, which is, oh my God, we agreed on something.
Yeah. How powerful to bear witness to that. I mean, that must feel pretty remarkable when you're able to see a couple finally each give a little bit, right, to make some progress. And I would imagine that if I was a mediator or collaborative attorney or litigant or whatever it may be, that I would want to have people like you, in my fold to call in to be able to help. Hey, listen, this couple, I'm not able to get them to budge on the agreement or in terms of, parenting time or whatever it may be.
I would certainly hope so.
Yeah, no, I
for
mean,
me, like my why in all of this, I tell the story like, oh, I kind of bumbled into it, but it wasn't such a bumble. I grew up in a high conflict divorce household. My father was called to the stand as a child to testify against one of his parents by the other, and had to choose one of his parents by the other. So and he's like, God rest his soul. He relived that with every woman he was ever with. Like in my 20s, I watched him, begging his mother for forgiveness from the fifth woman he was married to. I watched him do this again and again. And one day this light bulb went off. I said, oh my God, he's never resolved this issue with his mother. And so he's doing it with his wives. My poor father, I used to like speak. It was like this light bulb moment. So I saw my dad was severely damaged by his divorce. My brother and I were definitely traumatized by our divorce. And then when I got divorced, which I was never going to do, right? I'm not going to do this to my children. So of course I got divorced 5 years later than I should have. Which was really not so good for my children. That's another podcast, but I did actually get coached through it, right? Somebody coached me through it, and I got divorced in like 7 months, which is unheard of. It was incredibly inexpensive. It felt really expensive at the time, but now having seen what divorce can cost, my kids still had college money when they went to college, instead of my lawyers having money for their kids' college, they still had money. They had other people's money for their kids' college. But they didn't have my kids' college money for their kids' college, is what I'm saying. And the mother of my children and I are still allies to the best of our ability. When her mom died, I took her to the funeral. I paid the taxi. You know, I went there early. I stood by her side,
Mhm.
you know, because we are partners in the parenting business.
Yeah.
And we're not BFFs. Don't get me wrong. Like this
Right.
is, you know, I will always care for her and love her as a human being.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't like being around her very much, but she is the mother of my children, you know, and I learned all that. So I got into this business because I didn't want anyone's children to come out as messed up, a lot of
Right.
editing, language editing there. Easter's coming, as messed up as I did, or my brother, you know, who's a 300-pound, 58-year-old security guard and has been a security guard
Mhm.
for 30 years. He's a freaking brilliant guy who's been a security guard for 30 years. I don't, you know, he's just totally traumatized. I didn't want other people's kids to come out like that. And
Yeah.
that's why I allowed myself to bumble into PC work. And
Yeah.
PC work is difficult. It is challenging. It is, being a divorce coach is so much easier than PC work. Being even like, I have this gig that I do for men who want to save their marriages. That is so much easier than being a PC, but I stay with being a PC because that thing about the kids, that lives for me.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And it's so important because I really do think that, watching my son like turn into this, amazing young man, I think back on everything that we did together to try to get him there, right? And the compromise. And when I didn't want to have that phone call with my ex-husband, I did anyways because I knew that it was what was in the best interest of my son. And yeah, it's so powerful.
And truthfully, it's why I became a member of Vesta, you know, because we're all mixing and drinking the same Kool-Aid here. You know, we're all
Yeah.
about giving people who are divorcing the resources that they need. They may not want them, but they need them,
Yeah.
you know, to do what's best for the children. And because it's so easy in the divorce process to be just constantly triggered and at war and make and compromise your own values in the process. You know, when
Mhm.
people are in a concentration camp or at war, they'll compromise some core values to survive. And when people are getting divorced, they're in that survival mentality, you know, and our job is to help them get out of that mindset because it's not war. Divorce is
Right.
not war. It's the
Right.
end of the war.
Right.
It should be transforming the relationship so that it's workable for the children. And just like my ex-wife and I are not besties, we are really clear about what's best for the children.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I agree with you. We're not besties, but my ex-husband is definitely part of my, like, if I have a big decision to make, or I call it my inner council of men. And because I value his opinion, and I think that he's a good man. He's a great father. We weren't matched right. And I was also, I think, far too young.
And people, if you're listening to this and you're really angry at your husband or your wife, I want you to know, I was freaking furious with her.
Oh
I wanted
yeah.
to kill her. She was the source of all my problems. Everything that was wrong in my life had to do with her. That was like when I started the divorce. By that time I ended the divorce, I was like, wow, I really screwed up this marriage. Yeah, like, not that it ever would have worked, but it could have been so different. If I had woken up earlier, you know,
Yeah.
things could have been so much better if I had woken up earlier,
Yeah.
things could have been so much better for everyone else. You know, so you go from they are evil and blame and, you know, they're the worst. I'm not even I can't think of any names without getting political, so we're just going to avoid it. You know, whoever you hate, they're it. And, you know, when you get to, hopefully when you get to the other side, it's like, all right, I get it.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
children have a relationship with this person. They will always have a relationship with this person. We are joined, whether I like it or not, we are joined at the hip, and we need to
Mm,
learn to be allies, at least business partners, if nothing
mm.
else.
Yeah, I like that, business partners. So you had said that being a parent coordinator was hard.
Oh,
Let's go back to that for a minute. So tell me, I mean, aside from the obvious, what makes it hard?
for me or for them?
Both.
It's kind of the
Both.
same thing.
Okay.
You know, obviously my investment is that everybody learns to get along. Why
Mhm.
can't we all just get along? You know, like that. My investment is personal investment is right because for the sake of the kids. And the problem with that is that as a parent coordinator, I can't really have an investment in an outcome.
Okay.
You know, my investment as a parent coordinator is to hold a space that feels
Mm,
safe so that the parents can figure out what kind of outcome they want.
Okay.
Now, if the outcome that they want is one of them is going to die, well, then that's the outcome they want. But so the problem is that a good parent coordinator doesn't have a place to go. But the good news is that the mandate of the court is that parent coordination is about the best interest of the children. So that's kind of my touchstone. My touchstone is, all right, is we're going to focus on what's best for the children. And, if one parent says, well, I wish that he'd just die, I'm going to say, well, is that really what's best for the children? Instead of me saying, he can't die. Don't you understand? You have to get along, right? So I can get off of my stuff and just focus on that touchstone. But what makes it hard is that people inevitably start out with, actually, that's not true. On the first day, they're on their best behavior. It's usually the second or the third day that they jump in.
Right.
And that's tough for them too. When they slip into that familiar dynamic, the one that drove them to want to get divorced, right? They're like, why should I stop doing this? We're getting divorced, right? Isn't that going to end? It's like, no, you can keep doing that from separate domiciles in front of your children, right? And still ruin their lives, So it's like that's the hard part for them, is getting that even though they're getting divorced, that being married or not isn't the problem for the children. It's the part that's the problem for the children.
Yeah.
Right. So the studies show that, forgive me if I go on, may I keep going?
Yeah, please.
Right. Studies show that children who have the highest level of well-being have two parents that are kind of pretty much on the same page. They're not, maybe they're not in Shangri-La, they're not in, in perfect co-parenting harmony, but it's pretty good. Even for men and women who have different kinds of brains, it's pretty good. Maybe they've learned how to lean into the strengths of being a man and the strength of being a woman. That's usually those kids, super high well-being. The next one is parents who are divorced and have some kind of understanding, shared values, a sense of the well-being of the children, right? So divorced parents actually are just one notch below parents who are living together and have it's the shared value system that really helps. The next one below that are parents who are parallel parenting. Oh my God, they're in hell. But you know what's worse than that? People who are married in parallel parenting. So parallel parenting happens when people are married and they say, all right, we're going to tough it out for the kids. And one of them's a Democrat and the other one's a Republican, and one of them's, an atheist and the other one's is Jewish, and they're having cultural clashes and they're having these political clashes, or maybe they're not fighting. They've decided they're just going to live parallel lives and never fight for the sake of the children. But the kids feel the tension and the disagreement, that there's never any rapprochement, there's never any balance of power, there's never any communication. That's the worst situation in terms of child well-being. I mean, this is like statistically shown, studies.
Yeah. That makes me think of the being a kid, right? When you didn't get the answer that you wanted from dad, you went to mom, or vice versa. So and it was the evidence being that kids always split. It's like sometimes when you've got kids in separate households and your therapist says, oh, your child is splitting you. It's like, well, big freaking deal. Kids always split. That's, the child's natural inclination is to seek power, and they always get power by splitting. We do it with our parents. We do it at work. We do it out in the world. It's like, it's the strategy that works every time. Interesting. I haven't heard that before.
Conquer.
Yeah, like divide and conquer. Okay.
Natural human instinct.
Yeah. And then I guess this is kind of like a logistic-y thing, but do you help write parenting agreements with a mediator or with an attorney, or do you give guidance?
Great question. That is a great question. Typically, what I provide the mediator and or the attorneys, depending on whether it's litigation, collaboration, or mediation. So for those of you who are listening, there's three kinds of divorce. There's litigation, which is the old school, two rams butting heads. Well, it's not quite that bad though. And there's collaborative divorce, where the two rams have an agreement that if it fails, they won't go to court against each other. They're gonna do their best to be out for the best interest of the kids and not be so contentious. And then there's mediation, which is usually with one person mediating the two, and sometimes the lawyers will be in the room and sometimes they won't, depending on the level of contention between the couple. All right. So in all of those scenarios, I provide the parents with a summary of the agreement that they've come up with. And typically, the mediator or the attorneys will transform them into legal language. And so, the
Okay.
reason for that is I have a master's in social work, not a degree in law.
Mhm.
So I don't even try to write legal documents. Legal documents are written in a certain way because the lawyer has to think of every possible loophole. So when they
Mm.
write it, the reason why those legal documents are so long and take so much time to say one little thing is they're covering every little loophole. As a trained social worker, what the hell do I know about legal loopholes? So,
Right.
I write the basic agreement and then the lawyers add in all the stuff about the loophole, or the mediator adds in the stuff about the loophole. And let's be honest, sometimes lawyers aren't so good at that either, but they're better at it than I am.
Right. Right.
And,
Interesting.
kind of my belief is that the reason why mental health professionals should do parent coordination is because it's highly emotional and there's not a lot of legal stuff involved. So
Mm.
I'm trained as a mediator. I could be doing divorce work as a mediator, but I don't,
Mhm.
because I believe the law should always be a backdrop in divorce, and
Mm.
mental health practitioners don't really know the law. I
Mm.
won't do that. I believe that's just not right, fair, or good. But there are a lot of
Mm.
mental health professionals who disagree with me. They say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. People can agree to whatever they want." And I just think that's a bunch of caca.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So is
actually had one of those in my I started out in my divorce with a mediator. She was a
okay.
mental health professional, and we were talking about money. And I'd say, "Well, what does the law say?" And she'd say, "Well, the law doesn't matter here. You can do whatever you want." I said, "No, you don't understand. To me, the law matters. I want to do what's fair and right in the eyes of the law."
Mm.
Because for me, at that time, my concept of fair and right was grounded in the backdrop of the law. I trusted
Okay.
the law,
Okay.
but some people don't, and for them, maybe that's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. So do you have a
I fired her.
preference? You fired
I fired her.
her?
I hated her.
Did you still end up going down the route of mediation?
No, I got a litigator, but
Okay.
I got a guy who was like, "You know what? You guys don't have a lot of money, and you're a friend of a friend, kind of thing, and we're going to settle this fast."
Yeah.
And we got in front of a judge in Westchester County who looked at our stuff. He saw the agreement that we'd actually come to a lot of agreement with the mediator.
Mhm.
Like, he's like, "You guys are like 95% there. What the hell are you doing here?" And
Mm.
he took my first wife and I aside, and he said, "Listen, I'm putting you on a fast track." He said, "This is what you're going to do. You're going to agree to what's in this document now." And she was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." He says, "This is fair. You're getting a good you're getting a good deal. I'm a judge. I
Mm.
see a lot of, you're getting a good deal. This guy isn't trying to screw you. He isn't trying to take your retire." She was worked for the city and had retirement money. I had no retirement money. He's not trying
Mm.
to take your retirement money. He's not trying to, like, you take this deal. And
Yeah.
so he browbeat her into taking it.
Yeah.
And it was a good deal for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So how so this is kind of more of a personal question. So as a parent coordinator, as a divorced man now married with a blended family, how would you say that your children have fared through all of this?
My children are doing great in terms of especially in terms of the concerns of people in the divorce process. People in the divorce process have two or three major concerns about their children.
Mm.
When they stop thinking about they want to kill that person on the other side. So one concern is, my kids are never going to know how to have a healthy relationship. That's a big one.
I felt that. Yeah.
That's a big one,
Mhm.
because, "Oh, look what we did to our marriage, and they're
Yeah.
gonna, the sins of the father, and oh my God, like they go there, and like that's a valid concern, by the way,
Mhm.
especially if you think the person on the other side is evil, right?
Mm.
And then you're sure that they're going to poison your children. And another concern is that you're not going to have enough money to really take care of them.
Mm.
They won't be able to go to college.
Mm.
And then the third concern is that the divorce process itself is going to screw them up so badly that they're going to, do drugs, have a baby in high school, kill themselves, right? Those are kind of the
Mhm.
biggies right there, the three areas. And so gratefully, none of my children had a child in high school. I'm sure they did drugs, but they managed to keep it on the down low so that, mostly I wasn't aware of it, though, there were definitely moments where I was like, those are some red eyes, but they were pretty chill about it. I did have one child who, I found his girlfriend naked in a closet in our house one night, like that we like, it wasn't like we didn't have, and I just closed the door and just moved on. It was like, what are you going to say to that? Um, it was a special moment.
Nothing.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. So that's what we're keeping in the closet now, naked teenagers, and but what we did, like, none of that happened. And they've all gone on to I've got three kids who are married, a fourth child who's married and divorced, and the rest of them all have healthy relationships,
Mm.
pretty healthy relationships. So they didn't have kids. They managed to keep the alcohol and drug use, to a dull roar, as far as I can tell. And they seem to have relatively healthy relationships.
Yeah, that's amazing. And
And,
it's
wait. The most important part is
uh,
they didn't commit suicide,
mm,
or drop out. Well, actually, one of my kids dropped out of high school 3 months before senior graduation.
no.
Yeah, like, just as kind of a major fu to the school, went and got a GED.
Huh.
To this day, I do not understand what that was about.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so then he went to a community college. It's like, oh my God, my child is, I went to a good school. My wife and I went to Vassar. Both of us went to
Okay.
Vassar. That's where we met. So we were like, oh my God, our child's going to a community college. But he ended up getting a doctorate from Columbia. So he redeemed himself along the way. He went from the community
Wow,
college.
that's impressive.
Yeah, he went to Purchase, and from Purchase he went to Columbia. So it's like, all right, this is his path. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I always say that my parents are divorced and my parents have a very good relationship. And I didn't have necessarily the role model for the marriage part, but I feel like my parents did provide me roadmap to understand how to behave in a divorce situation so that
Mhm.
your kids can be as healthy as possible.
May I offer the listeners some unsolicited advice as to why I think my children are okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing is, if you're in the divorce process, you don't really need to worry about your kids right now. And you're not going to like the why. The why is your kids think that you're getting divorced because of them.
Mm.
Like, unconsciously. They're not conscious
Yeah.
saying, why did I make my parents divorce? Unconsciously, they feel like they failed you in some way, and that's why you're getting divorced. And you can't change that. No matter how much you say to them, it's not because of you. But you should say it to them. By the way, this divorce has nothing to do with it. Just keep saying it to them because they need to hear it.
Yeah.
But unconsciously, because that's where they're operating from, they are going to do everything they can to fix it. And so they'll probably be on their best behavior. They're probably
Mm.
going to keep going to school. They're probably going to keep getting grades, and they're probably going to act like, they're going to be there's going to be a level of denial that this is happening. That's how they'll stay. Mostly this is how it plays out. Unless your kids are already on a drug addiction trail, in which case the denial will just turn into
Yeah.
something more. I worked in addictions for years, and that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it is.
what happens is, when the anchor lands for them, maybe it's not an anchor, when the bomb lands for them is when the divorce papers are signed.
Mm.
When the divorce gets real, now they have actually failed.
Mm.
And so the studies show that the highest risk, this isn't just me making this up, the studies show that, this is why I love studies. The highest risk for our children is the first year after the divorce is over. And the reasons are, number one, they feel they failed.
Yeah.
Number two, as parents, we tend to breathe a sigh of relief, right? When the divorce is going on, we're in there paying attention. Are you okay? We're getting divorced. You okay? We're like in their corner. The divorce is over. We think the war is over now. Oh, the war is over. I can go out. I can date. Maybe I need to go back to the gym. We start focusing on ourselves again.
Yeah.
All right. And we stop focusing on them. So they feel like they failed. We're all breathing a sigh of relief and stop paying attention to them when they really need it. And the reality of that also, the biggest change has gone in place. Now they know they're stuck with two households if they're not already, or maybe they're just moving into two households, depending on how you did your divorce. But most people separate physically now, thank God, before the divorce actually ends. That makes it a little less traumatic. But the whole reality of clothes in two households, homework, then this is where the co-parenting and parallel parenting thing gets really important, by the way, right? Like the lower you are on the co-parenting scale, the more at risk your children are. The higher you are on the co-parenting scale, or alternatively, in my situation, my first wife was clinically depressed. And so my children just chose to not stay with her very often. It was just bad for them over there. So they were in a stable household for the most part. That's probably what saved them. Now, the other thing that's really going to save them is no matter what's going on the other side, whether they're, Dr. No or some other evil figure over there, they're a raging narcissist, is in your household, you want to have a meal with them regularly at like 4 or 5 times a week. We always had sit-down dinner with our kids, always. Right. And the studies show that families that have sit down dinner together, whether it's a single parent home or a dual parent home, that when you have sit down dinner with your kids, they become better socialized. They actually start talking about what's going on with their day. They can't help it. They're eating. Right. So, so they're focused on something else. And they're a lot less likely to start drinking at an early age or using reefer or any of the other good stuff that's out there at an early age, because they have to be there with you. Right. Part of it is they had to be there with you. That it's like this thing of, I can't tell you how many times I sat down with my parents and thought, man, I got to act straight. Like that is a tough line to walk. And my parents would be like, are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm fine. It's like, no kid wants to go through that. I didn't want to go through it.
Yeah.
So luckily my parents didn't have a lot of sit down dinners, so I didn't have to worry about it too much. But if you have a lot of sit down dinners with your kids, they're going to be concerned about it and they're going to stay away from that stuff. And then the other thing is you will have a freaking clue who their friends are and what's going on in their life. So that's the big thing, is especially in that first year, sit down dinners. But we still do sit down dinners whenever we can with them. They're in their 30s and we make them sit down and eat with us.
Yeah.
They want to sit down. That's the thing, is they want to sit down and eat with us now because it's normal. Like we call them, hey, you want to have dinner? Yeah, let's go to a restaurant. You want to come over to dinner? Yeah, we'll come over. That's like, it's the norm for them now.
Yeah. And I think such a so powerful what you said though about if you're parent watching this, is that really the first year after divorce, really be paying attention to the signs and giving your kids a little extra attention and love, so that they because they're still going through it. So
encourage them to go to the school counselor, because that's usually free. Or get them an outside therapist, or they have like coaches for adolescents now, whatever, somebody they can talk to that they feel comfortable with. Really important. Really important for me when my parents were getting divorced. I lived in the school counselor's office.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have resources for people during all stages of divorce. So
for sure.
Yeah.
We've got lots of therapists and coaches and all kinds of people at Vesta who can help you out.
Yeah. Is there anything that I have left out, Richard, that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. There's nothing that you left out, but I would love our listeners to know that if you want to reach me, you can reach me through my website, which is Rich in Relationship, richinrelationship.com, RICHINRELATIONSHIP.com. And you can track I got a podcast and a video blog that I was saying to Mandy is like, we're in episode 225 or something right now. And that covers everything around relationships. It's got massive stuff about divorcing a narcissist, kids, parallel parenting, blended families. We just did a whole section on blended families this year. Yeah, because I thought, wow, there's not enough out there about that. Everything that involves kids and parenting and kids is in there. Check it out. And you can always reach me directly if you have questions. I'm on a mission here Rich, R-I-C-H at richinrelationships.com.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure that I put it in the notes as well, so people can just click on to learn more about you or to connect with you to get some amazing further guidance.
Yeah, well, and I love hooking people up with resources and having that, like, that's why I'm a Vesta member, is it expands my resource base.
Yeah.
And because I really feel like people need as much help as they, it's not unusual for me to speak with people on the phone and for it to not to be a fit for us to work together in some way, and that's fine. Like it's about people getting the resources that they need, and if whatever that is.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us. And we'll catch you next time on Dishing with Divorce.